I was in a meeting with Lou Engle, and before I went to my room, one night after the meeting, I was getting ready to go to my room, and Lou was headed to his room, and one of his assistants was there, and he was headed to his room. And I knew this young man was a dreamer. And I said to him in jest as he was heading toward his room, I said, "Hey, Thomas, ask God to give you a dream for me tonight." And in jest, he said, "Okay." I mean, we both knew I was goofing off, and he was goofing off. The first thing he said to me the next morning, he said, "Papa Dutch, God gave me a dream for you." My first thought was, wish it could always be this easy. He said, "In the dream, you were a boxer." The athlete, not the dog. You knew that. You took one look at me and you knew that, right? And in the dream, you boxed 5 giants. And you knocked out all 5 giants. And you knocked out each giant with 1 punch. And you knocked out 1 per round for 5 rounds. So round 1, a giant stepped in the ring, you took him out. Round 2, another giant stepped into the ring, other hand, you took him out, 1 punch. Round 3, 4, 5, he said, 5 giants, 5 rounds, 1 giant per round, 1 punch. And then you walked out of the ring in the dream, walked up to him in the dream, held up my hands and said this to him: "If you're gonna take out the giants in this season, you're gonna have to wear these 2 gloves. One said Everlast, and one said Evergreen." End of dream. I knew this was significant. I knew the giants were strongholds in our nation. I knew that God was saying to me at the right time, if you do this my way, it's not gonna be all that difficult. 1 punch. And I said, "Lord, you got to show me what you mean by these 2 gloves, because that was the key. If you'll wear these 2 gloves, you can get them." I felt like I knew almost immediately what the Everlast word was all about, because I had been studying the life of Abraham. And I've been fascinated by the verse in Genesis 21:33, where Abraham called on God for the very first time as the everlasting God. That fascinated me. I wanted to know. I wanted to know at that point in his life why he needed a different name than Yahweh. Well, Everlast, or Olam, is a word that means eternal. It means more than just forever in the future. It's the God who's outside of time and rules time. It's the most distant eternity this way, and it's the most distant eternity that way. It's the God who's outside of time, who created time, who rules time, who's the God of yesterday, today, and forever, but is not controlled by it. Now, why would Abraham be thinking about this, and why would this so move him? Because Abraham has just gone through 25 pretty difficult years. He received a promise from God, and God said, as a part of that promise, "I'm going to give you a son through Sarah, and through that son, I'll give you a nation." And then he went on to make a lot of great promises about that nation, and the ultimate was that all the nations of the earth would be blessed through this son and this nation that's born. And Abraham is probably like you and me. He probably thought this was going to happen the next week. But a year went by, another year went by, and 5 years went by, and 10 years went by. Now they're getting up in years. Sarah has always been barren, so she's going to need more than just a creative miracle for her body to be renewed. She's going to need something to happen that's never happened to give her the ability to conceive. Abraham's getting up in years, so they finally, you know the story, come up with a plan. Let's do this through your maid, Hagar, and Ishmael is born. And Abraham says, here's your son. Now do what you promised me. And God said, "No, it's going to be through Sarah. I'm not going to accept that Ishmael is the one." It came to a point in time where they gave up completely. How do you know they gave up completely? Because we're told in the Old Testament, that the last time God came to them and said, I'm going to do this a year from now, they both laughed a cynical laugh at God. And Abraham, of course, he's 99 now, she's 90. He just basically said, come on, let Ishmael be the one. It's not going to happen. God worked with them, and we know from the New Testament accounts that he dealt with that unbelief, and they became, in a 3-month span, strong in faith. But they weren't always unwavering. They wavered. And not only did he fall short in that regard and impregnate his wife's maid, twice he lied about Sarah to kings and said, she's my sister, not my wife. If you want her, you can have her. We like to hide those things, but God doesn't hide it. He wants us to know that he didn't start out as an unwavering, covenant-keeping friend of God. He became an unwavering, covenant-keeping friend of God. He had some ups and downs along the way. He failed along the way. God had to help him. He was no more perfect than you or me, you or I. God had to do these. God had to help this man get through the hard times and work with him so that he could finally get him to the place where he could do through him what he said he would do. So not only was Abraham at times one who walked in unbelief, he was also a liar at times, and he was a covenant breaker. God was able to navigate him through those times and said, I didn't call you to do these things, Abraham, because I knew that you were perfect, and I didn't call you based on what I thought you could do. I called you to do this based on what I knew I could do in you. I knew that you didn't have the faith, but I would bring you to that faith. I knew that you were not a covenant keeper, but I would bring you to the point where you were a covenant keeper. I knew that you were not necessarily my friend, but I could make you my friend. I knew, in fact, when I gave you the prophecy right here and said, I'm going to do this for you, I knew when I spoke that to you that you were going to fail me right here. I knew I would have to do something sovereign and supernatural to keep that king from sleeping with her. But my faith wasn't in you, Abraham. My faith was in me. My faith wasn't in your ability. My faith was in my ability. Because when I made the promise, I looked ahead and said, this is what I can do through this man. Now Abraham's on this side of it. And he said, I failed back there, but you're the God that can reach back in time and heal history. And when I messed it up, you straightened it out. And when I made a mess, you were able to navigate me through that, and you navigated me through Hagar and Ishmael, and you navigated me through those kings, and you navigated me through the lies, and you broke all of it off of me, and you cleansed me, and the final word on my life was, this is my friend. And he calls on the God that can do all of that, this Olam. And God said to me, if you're going to take out the giants in this land, you're going to have to believe in that God. You can't just believe that he's strong enough. He needed more than the all-powerful God. He needed the God outside of time that could reach back and deal with his past. He needed the God that could deal with his future. Sometimes power's not enough. You've got to have the wisdom of an omniscient God who is out there ahead of you saying, before you ever fail, I know what I'm going to do to fix it. If you're going to take out the giants in this land, you're going to see God move in America. You're going to have to understand that it's not because you're perfect. It's not going to be because as a nation you've never failed. It's not going to be because you've never made messes and you've always followed me perfectly. You're going to have to believe that the blood of Jesus cleanses us from all sin and unrighteousness. You're going to have to believe that I'm bigger than your failures. You're going to have to believe that 250, 300, 400 years ago, when I said, this is what I'm going to do with this nation, that I knew you were going to mess up. I knew you would steal land. I knew that you would bring slaves in. I knew that you would wreck the marriage covenant. I knew you would kill your babies. But I also knew that I would bring an awakening, and I would cleanse this nation, and I would get you to the point where I can fulfill what I started. Because I'm bigger than you. And I can heal your past. And I can give you the future. That people say to me, America is not going to receive revival or awakening. We're too far gone. We're too into sin. We're too immoral. We're too this, we're too that. And I always say to them, Do you think that I'm asking for revival based on our merits? If we deserved it, we wouldn't need it. A sinner doesn't come to God and say, I'll be good enough, therefore you can save me. Come on, that's not the message of the cross. The message of the cross is even the sinner, the adulterer, the fornicator, the drug dealer, the murdering Saul of Tarsus who goes into Christians' homes and drags them out in front of their children and throws them in jail and murders them and is on his way on another mission to do the same thing again with letters giving him the right to do it. And God says, but I see something in him and I can cleanse him from all that sin. And I go before God for this nation. I'm not asking for revival because we've been good enough. I'm asking for it because his blood can cleanse us and give it to us. Everlast can do it. He can reach back. My faith is in him, not you. My faith is in him, not our prayers. My faith is in him, not an election. My faith is in him, not a movement. Certainly not in a party, a political party. My faith is that if a remnant of believers will humble themselves and pray and appeal to heaven, he will hear from heaven, forgive our sin, and heal our land. And I know that this is not just about us. This is about his purposes. This is about why he raised us up in the first place. So I felt like I understood Everlast. It's a faith in his ability to heal, to transform, to cleanse, to heal our past, ensure our future. But I couldn't get evergreen.